Grains are a critical part of a fitness lifestyle. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today, but a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, be greatly appreciated. If you're not subscribed or following, please do so, and if you will be kind enough to drop a comment down below, I would greatly appreciate that, so thank you so much. Let's get over to the topic of grains. It's really kind of insane that this has become a topic, in more recent years in different fads. A lot of people are like, oh, grains are a problem. Grains cause inflammations. Grains do this. You see fringe doctors who've written books on it. You have the extreme keto people, the people who are afraid of anti-nutrients. The reality is, when you look at the historical record, historically humankind, you look at the longest lived, healthiest cultures on earth, and you look at the best athletes, the best bodybuilders, the leanest, most jacked bodybuilders, the most fit athletes on earth, it actually becomes apparent that grains are literally a critical part of those lifestyles. So, and I'll jump into kind of the silliness, but realistically, look no further than Asia. There we go. Right? Longest lived societies on earth eat tons of rice and other grains. It's normal. Perfectly normal. So any idea that grains are a problem is crazy. But let's get over and let's look at the arguments people present. All right, number one argument, that grains cause inflammation. Well, then why don't we see it in the lab? Okay? People act like inflammation is some magical thing you can't measure. Like, oh, inflammation. It's like a mystical magic. It's like the midichlorian count, right? Or the Jedi or something. All right, guys. Inflammation is measurable in the body with various markers. It's not some ambiguous term, and inflammation is not necessarily always bad. It's a requirement to survive. But you look at the lab, generally most grains are mildly anti-inflammatory, particularly whole grains, right? They're anti-inflammatory. They reduce inflammation. People say, well, how can that be? They cause it, but they don't. You don't have evidence that they do. Neither in the lab nor even in hypothesis. And here's what I mean. So where did the original hypothesis that grains and omega-6 and all this were a problem? It came from the idea, the notice that arachidonic acid, which doesn't occur in plants, by the way. You want a source of arachidonic acid, look no further than eggs, certain types of meat, the pro-inflammatory omega-6. It's found in trace amounts in some animal foods, not found in plants really at all. Our body can make it in theory. Now, from early rodent models, again, this is why you got to be careful of rat models, what did they find? Well, that omega-6, that rats and other rodents can convert it to arachidonic acid at a high enough rate that it may cause some inflammation. But generally speaking, omega-6s are anti-inflammatory. So again, people need to understand this. Like, well, what about if they're processed? Well, the processed ones are too, but there's other issues. So a bunch of highly refined damaged omega-6, from high temperature oils and stuff, sure, there are problems, but it's not inflammation. They're still anti-inflammatory. So we need to be clear on that. Okay? Linoleic acid is anti-inflammatory. Okay? Now the argument is that it can convert to arachidonic acid, which is inflammatory. Okay? And in rodent models, it was enough so to see some inflammation. All right, so this is an old hypothesis, and this created all sorts of stuff like all these anti-grains, oh, they're inflammatory, all these books, right? Well, here's the problem. It's been tested later in the lab. What do we find? Well, we know that people who eat more whole grains have lower inflammation on average, so this doesn't work. So what do we find later? We looked at it and found out that linoleic acid in humans doesn't cause inflammation. It's an outdated hypothesis. It worked in rats, but when we tested in humans, you don't see inflammation. And the reason is because it doesn't convert it to arachidonic acid at a high enough rate for the inflammation from that to outpace the anti-inflammatory of the linoleic acid. So it's a case of we have lots of stuff in our body that are pro and anti-inflammatory at any different times. And so you have to look at the total balance of it. What ends up happening? Well, the net effect is that most omega-6, at least in linoleic acid form, ends up being mildly anti-inflammatory in humans. When it's consumed, inflammatory markers go down on average a little bit. Okay? Because the linoleic acid is anti-inflammatory and a small amount of it gets converted to arachidonic acid, which is inflammatory, but it's such a small amount in humans that it turns out it's just not enough to cause inflammation. It's not enough to offset the anti-inflammatory. So we end up being anti-inflammatory overall to a small extent. Well, then that applies to the grains also. Okay, that applies to the grains also. Then we come over to the fact that at least whole grains have antioxidants and things in them. Okay? antioxidants. Then you'll have many people, what about the anti-nutrients? This has been debunked. Like, this is fringe doctor guys like Guyant and all these other people push this anti-nutrient stuff. But all the top experts and researchers have pointed out, guys, we're not eating these foods raw. These foods that we're concerned with any of this in, if you cook them, it goes away. And we're not eating rice raw. We're not eating our oats raw. They've all been cooked. We're not eating raw grains for the most part as a species. They're all cooked. Even the oats you're buying have been pre-cooked and then dehydrated. Okay, this breaks all this down. So any of the concerns are just not there. We're not seeing these responses from foods. Our biggest one always is this fear of beans, but we cook those also. Okay, so this ridiculous idea that this is causing all these problems or absorption, major absorption issues or inflammation, it's not reality. These are hypotheses that we know have either turned out to not be true in humans, or stuff like, wow, just simply cooking your food ends up giving you a net positive. Okay, and a lot of these so-called anti-nutrients, which means anything that kind of blocks some of the absorption of other nutrients, okay, a lot of them have anti-inflammatory and health benefits in and of themselves, including the ones found in grains. All right, so when you look at all this, there's no actual reason to think grains are a problem. People say, well, what about the starch? But humans thrive on starch. And we've seen this. We've watched guys like a lot of these starch-based doctors literally almost cure type 2 diabetes on starch-based diets, get all their patients off insulin. Ornish diet, which is almost starch-based, seems to have completely halted atherosclerosis, and at least hypothetically, and this is a point of contention, not really been proven, it's debated, did appear in some cases that it may have reduced atherosclerosis in some patients. Like, we handle glucose and starches really well. It's our primary fuel source as a species. So we come over to grains are starch-based carbohydrates. This is our primary fuel. This is what we thrive on. Then you go look at civilizations. The cultivation of grains increased the population tenfold. Okay? Like, populations exploded. So it's certainly not hurting fertility or health, and it doesn't decrease longevity. What do we find? When grains are introduced in a culture and they're cultivated, we see the average lifespan increase. We see the population go up. Does this indicate a health problem? I want people to think about that. Every culture, when we've looked back in the record that added cultivated grains to their diet, we saw an increase in lifespan, average lifespan, and a massive explosion in population growth. Longest lived cultures on earth are grain-based. Almost all top athletes grain-based. Look at the best bodybuilders in the world. I mean, look at the chicken rice type bodybuilder diet. Produce massively jacked, shredded, ultra lean physiques. Okay? No one is getting fat and unhealthy or dying young or even getting diabetes from eating grains. This is not happening. It's not happening in the lab. It's not happening in epidemiology. It's complete fabricated nonsense to sell books and fad diets. It's exact opposite of reality. You're basically living an opposite world in that case. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.